I couldn't look away as his hands moved with practiced precision, mixing my drink. The way his fingers gripped the shaker, the flex of his forearms, everything about him drew me in. When he slid the glass across the polished wood, his fingertips lingered against mine. "This one's on the house," he murmured, his voice low, deliberate. The bar was nearly empty, just us and the soft glow of amber lights. I took a sip, never breaking eye contact. "What's the catch?" I asked, leaning forward, slightly. His smile was slow, knowing. "Maybe I just like watching you drink. Did you like the beginning?" Like it, subscribe, write in the comments what got you. The tension between us had been building for weeks. Every Tuesday night, I'd find myself at the Copper Room, claiming I came for their signature cocktails, but we both knew better. Silas had this way of making every drink feel like a personal invitation, every conversation like a secret shared between us. Tonight felt different, though. The air was charged with something unspoken, something that had been simmering beneath our careful exchanges. "You know," I said, tracing the rim of my glass with one finger. "I was thinking about what you said last week." He paused, bottle suspended mid-pour as he prepared another customer's order. "Which part?" "About some experiences being worth the risk." His eyes found mine immediately, dark and intense under the bar's warm lighting. The customer collected their drink and wandered away, leaving us in our bubble of anticipation. Silas moved closer, his presence suddenly overwhelming as he leaned against the bar opposite me. "And what conclusion did you reach?" His voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. Shifted on my stool, letting my dress ride up slightly. The movement wasn't lost on him. His gaze flickered down, then back to my face with renewed intensity. "I think some risks are worth taking." The bar was winding down, last call had been announced, and the few remaining patrons were settling their tabs. Silas moved through his closing routine with efficient grace, but I could feel his attention on me like a physical touch. Every time he passed, the space between us seemed to shrink. "You don't have to go," he said when the last customer left. His tone was casual, but there was an underlying current that made my pulse quicken. I watched him flip the sign to closed, lock the door. I wasn't planning to. He turned slowly, and suddenly the empty bar felt intimate, private. The city lights filtered through the windows, casting everything in a soft, golden glow. He approached with deliberate steps, each one making my breath a little shallower. "Bailey," he said, my name sounding different on his lips than it ever had before. "Are you sure about this?" Instead of answering with words, I stood, closing the distance between us. My hands found his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat through his shirt. "I've been sure for weeks." His response was immediate. His hands settled at my waist, warm and sure, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. When his lips finally met mine, it was like every conversation we'd ever had was leading to this moment. The kiss was deep, consuming, filled, with weeks of careful restraint finally breaking free. His hands moved up my sides, fingertips tracing the lines of my body through the thin fabric of my dress. I could feel the heat radiating from his skin, the careful control in every touch. When he pulled back, we were both breathing unsteadily. "Not here," he murmured against my lips. "Come with me." He led me through a door behind the bar, into a small office space. It was dimly lit, private, away from the windows and the world outside. The moment the door closed behind us, the energy shifted. We were truly alone now. No possibility of interruption, no need for the careful distance we'd maintained for so long. I turned to face him, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. There was desire there, yes, but also something deeper, a hunger that matched my own, a recognition that what was happening between us was more than just physical attraction. He approached slowly, giving me time to change my mind, but I didn't want to. I wanted this, wanted him, wanted to finally cross the line we'd been dancing around for weeks. When he reached me, his hands cupped my face gently, thumbs brushing across my cheekbones. "You're incredible," he whispered, and then his mouth was on mine again. This time, there was no holding back. His hands tangled in my hair, tilting my head to deepen the kiss. I could taste the faint hint of whiskey on his lips, could feel the controlled strength in the way he held me. My own hands explored the broad planes of his shoulders, the solid warmth of his chest. He backed me against the desk, his body pressing close, and I could feel every point of contact like electricity. His lips left mine to trace along my jaw, down the column of my throat, and I couldn't suppress the soft sound that escaped me. "God, Bailey," he breathed against my skin. "Do you have any idea what you do to me?" I arched into him, my hands working at the buttons of his shirt. "Show me." His response was to lift me onto the desk, his hands spanning my waist as he positioned me exactly where he wanted me. The cool wood beneath me was a stark contrast to the heat building between us. He stepped between my legs, his hands sliding, up my thighs, pushing the hem of my dress higher. Every touch was deliberate, measured, like he was savoring each moment. His fingers traced patterns on my skin that made me shiver, made me lean into him, seeking more contact. When his lips followed the path his hands had taken, I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. "You're so responsive," he murmured, his voice rough with desire. "So beautiful." I reached for him, needing to touch him the way he was touching me. My hands found the warm skin of his chest where I'd managed to open his shirt, tracing the lines of muscle, feeling the way his breath caught when I found particularly sensitive spots. He straightened, capturing my lips again in a kiss that was deeper, more urgent than before. His hands were everywhere, threading through my hair, skimming down my arms, settling at my hips with a possessiveness that made heat pool low in my stomach. "I want you," I whispered against his mouth, surprised by my own boldness but not regretting it. He pulled back to look at me, his eyes searching mine. "Are you certain? Once we cross this line?" "I've been certain since the first night I walked into your bar." That was all the encouragement he needed. His hands moved with new purpose, and I helped him with shaking fingers as we worked to remove the barriers between us. Every touch, every brush of skin against skin, sent waves of sensation through me. When he lifted me from the desk, carrying me to the small couch in the corner of the office, I felt weightless, completely consumed by the moment and by him. He laid me down with careful reverence, his eyes drinking in every inch of exposed skin. "You're perfect," he said, his voice barely audible. He joined me on the couch, his body covering mine, and the sensation of skin against skin was almost overwhelming. Every movement was slow, deliberate, designed to build the tension between us higher. His lips found the sensitive spot where my neck met my shoulder, and I arched beneath him. My hands explored the planes of his back, feeling the strength there, the way his muscles moved under my touch. When he shifted position, settling more fully against me, I gasped at the sensation, at how perfectly we seemed to fit together. "Silas," I breathed, his name escaping my lips like a prayer. He responded by capturing my mouth in another consuming kiss, his hands framing my face as if I was something precious. The pace between us was unhurried but intense, each touch building on the last, creating a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. Time seemed to slow as we moved together, lost in the sensations, in the heat building between us. Every shift brought new waves of pleasure, new discoveries about how our bodies responded to each other. His breathing grew more labored, matching my own, and I could feel the tension coiling tighter within me. When he whispered my name against my throat, the sound sent shivers through my entire body. I responded by pulling him closer, needing to feel every inch of him against me. The world outside the office might as well have ceased to exist. There was nothing but this moment, this connection, the steady build toward something incredible. "Look at me," he murmured, and when I met his eyes, the intensity there took my breath away. There was desire, yes, but also something deeper, a connection that went beyond the physical. The tension reached its peak gradually, like a wave building, strength before crashing against the shore. When it finally broke, it was with an intensity that left me trembling, clinging to him as sensation washed over me in waves. He followed moments later, his body tensing against mine before relaxing completely. For a long moment, we lay entwined, our breathing slowly returning to normal. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my skin, and I could feel the steady beat of his heart against my chest. The silence wasn't awkward. It was satisfied, content, full of unspoken understanding. I began, then trailed off, not sure how to finish. "Perfect," he completed, pressing a soft kiss to my temple. I smiled, turning in his arms to face him properly. I should probably go home. But even as I said it, I made no move to leave. His arms tightened around me slightly, and I could see he was as reluctant to end this as I was. "Stay," he said simply. "Just a little longer." So I did, curled against his warmth in the quiet office, listening to the distant sounds of the city winding down. Eventually, though, reality began to intrude. I had work in the morning, responsibilities to attend to. Reluctantly, I began to gather my clothes. He watched me dress with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Will I see you again?" he asked as I smoothed my hair. I paused, considering. What had happened between us was incredible, but it also complicated everything. The high bar was my regular haunt, my escape from the stresses of daily life. Could we navigate this new dynamic without ruining what we'd built? "Tuesday night?" I said finally. "Same time?" His smile was answer enough. I made my way home through quiet streets, my body still humming from his touch, my mind replaying every moment. By the time I reached my apartment, dawn was beginning to creep across the horizon, painting the sky in soft pastels. I fell into bed exhausted but exhilarated, my dreams filled with the memory of his hands, his voice whispering my name. When I woke hours later, for a moment I wondered if it had all been a fantasy. But the slight soreness in my muscles, the lingering scent of his cologne on my skin, confirmed that it had been beautifully, perfectly real. The week that followed was strange. I found myself distracted at work, my mind wandering to thoughts of Silas, of what had happened between us. I caught myself checking my reflection more often, wondering if anyone could tell just by looking at me that something fundamental had shifted. My friends noticed my distraction. During our regular coffee date, my roommate Emma kept shooting me curious glances. "You're glowing," she said finally. "New skincare routine, or something more interesting?" I deflected with a laugh, but she wasn't fooled. "Come on, Bailey, spill. What's got you looking like the cat who got the cream?" I considered telling her. Emma had always been my confidant for romantic adventures, but something about what had happened with Silas felt too private, too precious to share just yet. "Just been sleeping better," I said, which wasn't entirely untrue. Despite getting home so late, I'd slept more soundly than I had in weeks. Tuesday couldn't come fast enough. I changed outfits 3 times before settling on a simple dress that struck the right balance between casual and alluring. When I walked into the copper room, my heart was racing with anticipation and nervous energy. Silas was behind the bar, as always, but when his eyes met mine across the room, the familiar space felt charged with new energy. He finished serving another customer before making his way over to where I'd taken my usual seat. "Evening, Bailey," he said, his voice carrying the same warm professionalism as always, but there was an undertone that made my pulse quicken. "Evening," I replied, surprised by how normal I sounded when my heart was pounding. He began preparing my usual drink without being asked, his movements as graceful as ever. But when he set it down, his fingers lingered against mine for just a moment longer than necessary. "How was your week?" he asked, leaning slightly closer. "Long," I admitted. "Yours?" "The same." His eyes held mine. I kept thinking about Tuesday night. The simple admission sent heat rushing through me. "Good thoughts, I hope. The best." He straightened as another customer approached, but not before adding quietly, "Stay after closing?" I nodded, probably. Too eagerly, but I didn't care. The rest of the evening passed in a haze of anticipation. I nursed my drink slowly, watching him work, admiring the efficient grace with which he moved behind the bar. Every now and then, our eyes would meet, and the air between us would crackle with unspoken promise. When closing time finally arrived, I could barely contain my excitement. The routine was the same. He locked up, flipped the sign, and led me to the back office. But this time, there was no uncertainty, no need for careful exploration of boundaries. We both knew exactly what we wanted. The moment the office door closed behind us, he pulled me into his arms. The kiss was immediately intense, full of a week's worth of pent-up desire. His hands roamed my body with more confidence than before, already familiar with what made me respond. "I couldn't stop thinking about you," he murmured against my neck. "Show me," I whispered, echoing my words from the week before. This time, our movements were less tentative, more urgent. We knew each other's bodies now, knew what touch would make the other gasp, what kiss would make us both lose our minds. The desk became our stage again, but the performance was entirely different, bolder, more passionate, driven by a week of anticipation. When he lifted me onto the surface, his hands were already working at the hem of my dress, and I was reaching for his shirt with equal eagerness. The cool wood against my skin was a sharp contrast to the heat of his body as he pressed close, and I wrapped my legs around him, pulling him even closer. "God, Bailey," he breathed, his hands tangling in my hair. "You drive me crazy." I could only respond with a soft moan as his lips found that sensitive spot on my throat again. My hands explored the familiar territory of his chest, but with new purpose, new confidence in what I was doing to him. When he moved to join me on the couch, the anticipation was almost unbearable. Every touch was electric, every kiss deeper than the last. We moved together with a rhythm that felt both new and timeless, building towards something even more intense than what we'd shared before. This time, when the waves of pleasure crashed over me, they were stronger, more consuming. I cried out his name, not caring who might hear, and felt him follow moments later, his body shuddering against mine. Afterward, as we lay tangled together on the narrow couch, I realized something had fundamentally changed. This wasn't just a physical attraction anymore. It was something deeper, more meaningful. The way he held me, the tender kisses he pressed to my forehead, the careful way he smoothed my hair, all spoke of emotions that went beyond desire. "I think I'm in trouble," I admitted quietly. He tilted his head to look at me. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where I can't imagine Tuesday nights without this." His smile was soft, understanding. "Then don't." It was that simple and that complicated. Over the following weeks, our Tuesday night tradition evolved into something beautiful and complex. What had started as an escape from routine had become the highlight of my week, something I counted down to with anticipation that grew stronger each time. But it was also becoming harder to maintain the careful boundaries we'd established. The connection between us was growing stronger, and I found myself wanting more than just Tuesday nights. I wanted to know him outside the bar, wanted to explore this thing between us in daylight, in normal settings. The thought scared me as much as it thrilled me. Silas had become my secret, my private escape from the rest of my life. What would happen if we tried to make it something more public, more real? One Tuesday, as we lay in the afterglow of our passion, I voiced these concerns. "What are we doing here?" I asked, tracing patterns on his chest. He was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want us to be doing?" It was a fair question, but not an easy one to answer. "I don't know," I admitted. "This is perfect as it is, but sometimes I wonder, what if we tried something different?" He suggested gently. "Dinner somewhere? That isn't here. A real date." The word date sent a thrill through me. "And if it ruins this? What if it makes it better?" I considered this, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. What we had was incredible, but it was also limited. Maybe it was time to see if what we'd built could survive in the real world. "Okay," I said finally. "Let's try it." The smile that spread across his face was worth the risk. Our first official date was the following Saturday. He picked me up at my apartment, looking devastatingly handsome in dark jeans and a button-down shirt. Seeing him outside the context of the bar was strange at first, like seeing a familiar painting in a new frame. But as the evening progressed, I realized that the connection between us wasn't dependent on the setting. He was just as charming, just as attentive, just as capable of making me laugh over dinner as he was across the bar. The conversation flowed as easily as it always had, and when he walked me to my door at the end of the night, the goodnight kiss was just as electric as any we'd shared in the office. "This was perfect," I said against his lips. "Even better than Tuesday nights," he teased. "Different," I admitted, "but just as good." From that point on, our relationship evolved beyond the confines of the bar. We still had our Tuesday tradition. Some habits were too good to break, but we also began exploring each other's lives outside those stolen hours. I learned that he'd been a chef before becoming a bartender, that he made incredible pasta from scratch, that he had a weakness for old movies and jazz music. He discovered my love of dancing, my terrible habit of singing in the shower, my collection of vintage books. We fit together in ways I hadn't expected, our lives interweaving naturally despite the unconventional way we'd begun. The Tuesday night encounters became even more intense, charged with the emotion that was growing between us. What had started as pure physical attraction had deepened into something that scared and thrilled me in equal measure. When he looked at me across the bar now, I saw not just desire but affection, understanding, the promise of something lasting. One evening, after we'd been seeing each other for 2 months, he surprised me by closing the bar early. "Special occasion?" I asked as he locked the door with an hour still left in the usual schedule. "You could say that." He led me to the office, but instead of the passionate urgency that usually characterized our encounters, his movements were gentle, reverent. "Silas?" I questioned softly. He cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across my cheekbones. "I love you, Bailey." The words hung in the air between us, beautiful and terrifying. I'd been feeling the same thing for weeks, but hadn't dared to voice it, afraid of changing the dynamic between us. "I love you too," I whispered, and the smile that spread across his face was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. When he kissed me then, it was with a tenderness that took my breath away. Every touch was a declaration, every caress a promise. We moved together with a passion that was both gentle and intense, declaring our feelings with our bodies as much as our words. Afterward, as I lay in his arms, I marveled at how far we'd come from that first night when he'd slid my drink across the bar. What had started as attraction had grown into something real and lasting, something that promised to be the beginning of something beautiful. "No regrets?" he asked, as if reading my thoughts. I thought about it seriously, considering everything that had led us to this moment. The risk I'd taken that first night, the leap of faith we'd both made in exploring this connection, the way we'd opened our hearts to each other. "None," I said firmly, "not a single one." He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. "Good, because I plan on keeping you for a very long time." Looking back now, I can see that Tuesday night was when everything changed for me. When I walked into the copper room for what I thought would be just another drink, I had no idea I was about to meet the person who would become the center of my world. Sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them, when you're brave enough to take a chance on something that feels both dangerous and irresistible. What started behind that bar became the foundation for something lasting and beautiful. And every Tuesday night, when I see him preparing drinks with those skilled hands, when he looks at me with eyes full of love and desire, I'm reminded of how perfect some risks can be. Have you ever taken a chance that completely changed your life? Maybe it was a conversation with a stranger, a spontaneous decision, or following your instincts when logic told you to walk away. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Sometimes the best adventures start with the smallest steps. Don't forget to like this video and hit subscribe for more stories that'll make your heart race. Until next time, remember that some of the most beautiful things in life start with a single moment of courage.